Whenever I talk to people about electric cars, the two biggest objections that they always seem to have is they don't go far enough and they take too long to charge. And in a world where we've been used to internal combustion engine cars, where we just go to a petrol station and take 3-4 minutes to fill it up with petrol or diesel and then go on for 400 or 500 miles, and I can kind of see the point. But what if I was to tell you that there was an electric car available today that can do 400 miles, up to 400 miles, and to fill it up only takes between 3 and 4 minutes? Well, you'd sit up and take notice, wouldn't you? And this isn't some flight of fancy concept car from some unheard of Chinese startup. This car is available today to buy from a dealership from one of the world's biggest and most reliable car manufacturers. And this is it. It's the Toyota Mirai. But before you get carried away and think this is the answer to all of our problems, there's a bit more to it than meets the eye, as we'll soon find out. Welcome to this week's AutoEV road test. Welcome to the Toyota Mirai, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we go on to this week's road test of the Toyota Mirai, it is of course that time where I ask you to, if you'd be so kind, make sure you subscribe to the AutoEV channel, give the videos a bit of a thumbs up, and make sure that you leave us some comments down below. If you've already been a supporter of the channel so far, thank you ever so much. If you've yet to become one, please consider it, because, well, every little bit helps. Okay. Now, for years now, manufacturers have been looking at alternative fuels, obviously for the impending doom of 2030 as the internal combustion engine is pretty much phased out in the UK. And some of those alternative fuels have been such things such as Porsche with synthetic fuels, obviously manufacturers with electricity. But there has been a select few that have been focused on fuel cell vehicles and, more importantly, hydrogen, which is what the Mirai runs on. People like BMW, Mercedes, Honda, Hyundai and of course Toyota have been very, very keen to go down that path. And whilst some of them have given up on it and left that space, Hyundai and Toyota have pretty much kept on it, thinking, well, this could be an alternative. And it is one of only 2 hydrogen cars that you can buy in the UK today. But the question is, should you? Well, let's stick it through an AutoEV road test and find out. Now, as always, we'll start with how the car looks. Now, this is the second generation Mirai. The first one was actually based on the Prius, and it looked like a Prius that had been kind of facelifted in Minecraft. This one's a lot more palatable, and it's based on the Lexus LS, so it's a much more longer, more kind of elongated car, and dare I say, more elegant looking. I do like this kind of split headlamp design with these lights that kind of sweep back into the wings, and this kind of high set nose. And of course you've got the grille down at the bottom there, because it's a hydrogen car, so it does need a grille because it needs oxygen. But what does the rest of it look like? And it's of course in the side profile where we get to see that kind of more elongated, more elegant looking shape. It's almost like a sort of 4-door coupe, like a kind of Mercedes-Benz CLS style of car. I do like these 20-inch turbine blade wheels, these alloys. These look really nice on the car. They've kind of almost a kind of black kind of chrome finish on them, which is really nice. Get a fuel cell badge. The wing mirror's a bit incongruous with this kind of big, but there's a lot of cameras on the car, and we'll see a lot of the tech later on. But yes, as I say, a much better looking car than the first generation Mirai. And as I say, this nice sloping roofline takes it back into this really nice, neat rear end. It has this kind of, as I say, 4-door coupe like look to it, and you think it could be a hatchback, but it's not. It is a booted saloon, but I'll come on to practicality in a bit. Of course, there we go, light bar across the back. As I say, it's not going to go down in history as one of the best looking cars ever, but what it does look like is a nice, presentable, slick, modern Toyota. And I like that. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. Now, the Mirai has many talents, but practicality isn't really one of them, because packaging hydrogen tanks, well, that's quite an art form, and the Mirai has 3 of them, as we'll get on to later. Still, let's take a little look. Boot space is a relatively small 321 litres. Now, to put that into perspective, a Volkswagen ID3 has 385 litres, and a BMW 5 Series, which is a similar size of car, has 530 litres. And there isn't really any underfloor storage at all. In fact, there's none. I mean, because that's, you know, got your jack in there, and there's a hydrogen tank in there, and there's another one behind the firewall here, the bulkhead between here and the rear seats. So there's no load through facility. This is the space you have. On saying that, it does still fit the AutoEV suitcases in. So there's a large suitcase, which we can slot in there, a medium size one which goes in there, and then we get our two carry-ons just down the side in there. So yeah, so 4 suitcases do fit with the boot being closed. But yeah, as I say, practicality isn't really what it's about. And nor is it rear seat space, really, because, well, there's not a huge amount of it, if I'm being honest. Now, in fairness, the seat electronically moves back, so that's not in my driving position as normal. That passenger seat is more like my driving position. I try to set it up the same, but when you switch the ignition off, this one slides back to give you sort of like a better exit. Now, as you know, I'm 5'7", 5'8", and I'm sitting behind. So if someone 6 foot was in front of me, because I'd probably think that's the kind of driving position for a 6 foot driver, but there's no real space under the seat to get my feet under, and I am really close to this headlining here, although it's scooped out. Because of this big glass kind of sunroof, I'm really conscious of it being there. It's right there above my forehead. So no, there's not a huge amount of space back here. There is no flat floor because, as I say, packaging hydrogen tanks, they're done in a sort of T shape in the Mirai. So you've got one down the length of the car and another across the back underneath the rear seats. So it's, again, there's this huge transmission tunnel, so you're not going to get anybody sitting in that middle section despite there being another belt there. Now, the first generation Mirai, Toyota did just as a 4-seat car, and they've taken the decision this time to try and pass it off as a 5-seater, but there's just no way, because you just, well, you can't, you see. I mean, yeah, even a child, I think, would struggle with that. However, you can drop down this big centre armrest, which is very nice. And on this car, this is the top of the range car, it does have these controls here for the rear climate control system, a little touchpad here, which is nice. You get also storage in there, and you get fold out cup holders, which is nice. You also get 2 USB ports in there and the vents there. But as I say, there's no load through facility, so forget that. Yeah, I think if you ended up with a Mirai, you would just have it as a 4-seat car. Forget any pretensions of having someone sitting in this middle bench. There's ISOFIX points, which are relatively easy to get to, and as we'll go on to fit and finish in the front of the car, the rest of it is, well, it's really well built with nice use of materials in the back. There's no door bins, however, at all, so your storage is limited to these pockets here, and as I say, that bin in there. So yeah, it's not ideal for those in the back. But when you move up front, things do get better. Now, it's not all good news, but I'd say there's more good news than bad. So let's switch it car on. You see everything kind of whirs into my driving position. You have a relatively nice layout in front of you. The first thing you notice when you get in the car is, as I said before, the fit and finish. It's very good. It's as you'd expect for a Toyota. It's exactly as you'd expect. They're nice kind of soft touch materials across the dashboard and on the doors. Depending on the trim level that you go for, this is the design premium. So I've got semi-aniline leather seats, which are very nice. They're very supportive, comfortable driving position. A round steering wheel. Take note, BMW and Audi. A round steering wheel. It's nice to hold. It's just got the right amount of buttons on it as well, so it's not too overcrowded there, and then easy reach column stocks, and then the surrounding ancillary buttons that you would need. Window controls on door. Down here you've got the ones for automatic lights, heated wipers on the front in case it gets frosty. A button that says snow, which I assume is for when it is snowing, not that it makes it snow. And then some of your cameras and your DSC button. This is the bit, however, I've got a bit of an issue with. Now, the dashboard layout is okay. This is a 12.3-inch infotainment system here, and then you've got an 8-inch driver's digital cluster in front of you. Let's start with the bad stuff, which is this infotainment system. It just all feels a bit last generation. The clarity's not that great. It's quite confusing at times to get into because it's got these menus that pop in from the side and you can switch them round depending what side you want them on. It does come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, so you do have that, but even when that's plugged in, as I say, the clarity is just it's a bit grainy, and I kind of expected it to be better, if I'm honest with you. You've got some shortcut buttons along the bottom here. So track, seek, menu, audio, map, to go to the homes page, volume up and down, and then switch the system off. And you can have, there's a little menu down the side here, which is a little bit kind of difficult to get to, but for instance, you can have your audio on, your settings menu, or your energy menu. Now that's quite interesting because if you're a bit geeky, you can really go into this and find out what the type of energy you're using, the history of what you've used, your air purification. Because it's a hydrogen car, it does actually clean the air as you drive along. I'll get onto that a bit later. So if you're a bit geeky, all that stuff is in there. But oddly enough, you've got climate control systems in the screen, but you've also got them mirrored down here. Now I'm not sure why you need that, why you need the digital ones up here when they're nice and easy, and they're within easy reach. It's not like they're not easy to reach when they're down here, and actually they're a lot better being down there. So yeah, that's the one part I don't think is brilliant. It just kind of lets the side down. It's about time Toyota came up with a much clearer, much better setup for their infotainment system. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you've got this 8-inch driver display here, which is okay. It displays probably the right amount of information. It looks a lot at first, a bit like the Lexus UX300E when we first got in that car, and you look at it, you think, gosh, that's a lot of information in a small area. But it's okay once you start to get your head around it. Big clear digital speedo, time, fuel, well, hydrogen gauge there, miles to empty, and then you can scroll through it using these buttons here, depending obviously what you want the center display to show you. So whether it's the energy flow, some of your settings, for switching your lane keep assist off, your cruise control, your speed limiter, that's all in there, or your message system there. Or you can go audio, little kind of, as I say, lane keep assist, or your eco meter telling you when you're going too fast or when you're economy or when it's charging. So that's okay, and as I say, it just seems to overwhelm you at first, but it's fine. Then there's this weird kind of stuck on bit of plastic on this side which just houses an air vent and this button that says H2O. Now the Mirai has an exhaust because the byproduct of the hydrogen is water, is H2O, which the car will release from its exhaust system, but you can purge the system yourself by pressing that button, which is fine, but I'm not sure why it needs to be housed in this big plastic area here. It just looks a bit, I don't know, a bit incongruous and a bit unnecessary personally. Moving down here, again, as I say, your climate control system's nice and easy to use. Two big kind of cup holders there. Got a big centre armrest here. It doesn't go particularly deep because, again, like the back, you've got a hydrogen tank under there, but you've got two USB ports there and a 12-volt socket. Top of the range car like this one has wireless charging capability here, which is quite nice and easy to reach. This is a bit odd. This is the transmission lever. I don't know why Toyota don't fit buttons, but you move this lever, so you want to go to reverse, you do that, and back to neutral is that, and then drive is that, and if you want to go into the brake regen, I think you press and hold that back, and that's you in B mode. No, that's it there. Pull it back from neutral to there. Bit odd, but there you are. And then park's just above that. Park assist there, your drive mode select buttons there, the hill hold assist, and an electronic park brake there. The driving position is nice. As I say, the seats are good. I get a good range of adjustment with them. The only thing I will say is, again, with this big glass sunroof, I feel like I'm quite close to the roof, and I'm quite short. I just think it's probably a car that if you are looking at and you are taller than me, don't just go for a 5-10 minute drive. Go for a bit longer, because you're going to need to adjust the seat a little bit more and play with it around to get the driving position. It's nice for you, but I just kind of feel I'm quite close to this bit for some reason, which feels a bit odd. I seem to sit kind of quite high in the car. But as I say, the seats are nice, they've got enough support, they're certainly comfortable. Straight ahead driving position, as I say, nice round steering wheel with electronic adjustment on this particular model. Fit and finish, as I say, is good. It's as you'd expect. Yes, there are some kind of slightly cheaper plastics, but as I say, no more so than you expect to find in a similar priced Hyundai or Kia, so I'm not going to label Toyota for being bad at that. I would like to see them move away from this piano black plastic because it just attracts dust, and yeah, I think I'm kind of over that now. We need to think of some other kind of material we need to use here, because that just looks like loads of fingerprints and dust on a sunny day like today. But that's pretty much it. If I'm going to summarise the interior, I'd say it's good, but it's not good enough. Okay, so let's talk about how the Mirai actually works and how you, well, fill it up. A fuel cell car works by having, well, a stack of fuel cells, 330 of them in the case of the Mirai, and that's it there. And what a fuel cell actually does is it takes the hydrogen that's stored in the tanks, and there are 3 of them in the Mirai. As I say, they're arranged in a sort of T shape down the car. 2 of them are, and then there's 1 behind the rear seats. And it mixes that hydrogen with the oxygen coming into the car. And that creates electrons, and it's those electrons that actually power an electric motor. So as I say, a Mirai is an electric car. Although it's a fuel cell, although it doesn't have a battery, well, it does actually have a battery, because any surplus electrons that it creates, it stores in that battery for later to give it a little bit extra kind of boost or charge. But on the whole, it doesn't work like a normal electric car that we've been used to, where you plug it into an electric car charger and it takes electricity from that and stores it in a battery. The Mirai doesn't. It creates its own electricity by mixing the oxygen and the hydrogen to power the motor, which is mounted at the back to drive the rear wheels. So, how do you fill it up? Well, you fill it up, well, pretty much like you would fill up a petrol or a diesel engine car, except you pull up outside a hydrogen station and you plug it in here. Now, hydrogen is dispensed in weight rather than volume, and the Mirai will take around about 6 kilos of hydrogen, and to deliver that, depending obviously on the type of pump that's used, it will be done in between 3 and 4 minutes, like I said at the beginning of the video. And Toyota say, according to WLTP figures, it should give 350 to 400 miles, depending on atmospheric temperature and so forth. Now, the hydrogen is stored at around 7 bar, which is a lot. That's a lot of pressure that it's all kept under. But in terms of safety, obviously, it's at the forefront of any car these days, but especially with something that's as unknown and, dare I suggest, as volatile as hydrogen. So the tanks in the Mirai are constructed from a very high strength carbon fibre Kevlar style material that are tested by firing bullets at them and crashing them, all sorts of things. So you've got genuinely nothing to worry about in terms of the safety record of a hydrogen car whatsoever. So this is it then, the electric car we've all been waiting for. Range of 400 miles, easy to fill up, relatively inexpensive. Well, it's about £70 to fill up a Mirai at today's prices, which is no different to filling up a normal kind of saloon car with petrol or diesel. It'll do 400 miles in relative silence and create no emissions. Job done then. Well, now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the actual practicality and the usability of running a hydrogen car. You see, currently in the UK, there are only 14 hydrogen fuel stations available, and most of those are around about the southeast of England, which is fine for me because that's where I live. In fact, I've actually got one just a few miles away, so it's perfect for me then. Well, it is until I need to visit my mother in Scotland, where there really aren't any, apart from Aberdeen, which is close to where she lives, and I'd need to fill up on the way down as well, and it just wouldn't work. That's the problem. And then there's the viability of hydrogen itself and the wastage that's created in the actual production process. You see, between production of hydrogen through transportation, distribution to the end user, there's a 52% waste of the original energy used to create hydrogen in the first place, which isn't good. All of a sudden, those reticent arguments for having to wait for an electric car to charge at a charging station don't seem that bad, do they? So how does the Mirai feel to drive? Well, it feels like any other electric car, because as I say, that's what it is. It is an electric car. It's very smooth, it's very quiet, it's very refined, and it's on that side of the scale where the Mirai sits. There's no excitement to be had from this car. It's 178 brake horsepower produced through a motor that's mounted at the rear, but don't start thinking that it's going to be any kind of tail slides or hanging the tail out of this one on twisties, because it's not. It's just a very refined, comfortable and quiet car that goes about its business in a very nondescript kind of way. And I think obviously that's the kind of person that it's going to suit. If that's the type of car you want, if you're looking for excitement in an electric car, then you're going to have to look elsewhere, I'm afraid. Its steering is light, it's not particularly communicative, but it's not particularly slack. It just does the job of turning the front wheels. You know where they're pointing, and that's absolutely fine. The brakes, well, the pedal needs a little bit of a further push, but it's got a nice feel to it. That's what I will say. It feels like you're stopping the car's not doing it for you, which I quite like in some respects. And it doesn't have that deadness to it that you get from some of the kind of PSA cars. It's, as I say, you feel the brakes bite, which is nice. It does have a form of brake regeneration, and you do that by bringing the transmission lever back into the BR mode, which I assume means brake regeneration in Toyota parlance. It's not one pedal driving, but it does slow the car down. It's not going to bring it up to a complete standstill, but it's handy maybe for those areas when you're maybe in more kind of congested environments where you just rely on a little bit more kind of brake regen. That's about it. The suspension's compliant. It's nice, as I say, it's comfortable. The lack of awareness of your environment is probably the Mirai's biggest selling point, as I say, that kind of refinement. It feels Lexus-like, and that is a compliment, because the UX300E, there wasn't a lot to really recommend that car, except for the fact of the way it went about its business in such a relaxing, quiet, refined and nondescript way. And the same applies here to the Mirai. That's exactly the same. I've got a comfortable driving position. I don't need anything else. I've got good visibility around about me. It's absolutely fine. It's just that if you're looking for excitement and something really, really different, you're going to have to look elsewhere, I'm afraid. Now, there are the usual caveat of safety equipment on the car, so lane keep assist, radar guided cruise control, and there's a lot of cameras around the car. As I say, there's even one instead of the rear view mirror. So if you're a bit of a tech fest, then that kind of suits you well. Does it add anything to the driving experience? No, not really. It's not like Tesla where they fitted any kind of autonomous driving to it. So yeah, that's really about it. That's all I can really say. Oh, driving modes. We didn't talk about them. Well, yes, there's some driving modes. Let's talk about them, because they're this button down here. Now, I've been driving it around in its kind of normal mode, and there's three. There's Eco, as you'd expect, which kind of just ekes everything last out. One thing I will say about the Eco mode is it doesn't feel a huge amount different to the normal mode. Most of these cars, they have a real deadness to the pedal, the accelerator, and it doesn't in the Mirai. It feels kind of normal, so that's maybe a good thing. But anyway, from there we can go back to normal, or we can go to sport, and things start. You get a little red kind of graphic in the instrumentation binnacle, and if we give it a squeeze of the accelerator, yeah, it picks up speed okay. As I say, it's not something I want to throw around down a kind of twisty road, if I'm honest with you, because, well, the limitations of the rest of the car is going to come to the fore at that point, and well, yeah, that's not ideal. So yeah, to summarise, it's fine, it's nice, it's adequate, it's comfortable, it's refinement. It is the automotive equivalent or a pair of old comfy slippers. They're not the most exciting things you're going to wear, but they just feel comfortable, and you can just kind of lounge in them and not worry about what people think. think that could be the first time anyone's ever compared a car to a pair of slippers. Let me know in the comments if you think it is. So, if you do think a Mirai is the car for you, what are you looking at price-wise? Well, the range starts with the design model at $49,995. Then you move up to the design plus pack car at $63,995. This is the design premium car, which is at $64,995. That's a big jump, but there is a huge amount of difference within the equipment. And of course, these prices are correct at time of filming. And it may seem like a lot of money, but that £50,000 lead-in price for the base Mirai is a lot less than the first generation car was when it first came to the UK. And this is a vastly superior car to that. And also remember, that £50,000 bracket, whilst not inexpensive, is kind of where there's an awful lot of electric cars available for sale. So it is competitive, shall we say, if it's the car for you. And if it is the car for you, well, what could you compare it to? Well, if it is hydrogen that you're drawn to, the fuel cell, then you've only got one other option, which is the brilliant Hyundai Nexo, which is the only other car that's on sale. But that's a SUV, and it's a little bit more expensive than even the top of the range one of these. But as I say, bear in mind that £50,000 bracket, and what I said earlier is the Mirai is still just an electric car. So there is quite a bit of competition you could think about when thinking of a Mirai. Tesla Model 3, Hyundai Ioniq 5, Kia EV6, Polestar 2. You just have to weigh up what's going to be the more practical option for you. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the Toyota Mirai. We like its design, its refinement, it's well equipped, and it's efficient and has a good range. We don't like the poor packaging. The interior tech feels like last generation stuff. The high price for the upper trim level. And the limited use caused by an inadequate refuelling infrastructure. The Mirai was always going to have a very limited appeal, and not just because of the lack of refuelling infrastructure, but also because at this price point, that £50,000 to £65,000, that is a real dearth of talent around there in the electric vehicle market. And to be honest with you, the cars that occupy that space, well, they're not really that far behind the Mirai in terms of their range, and because of their fast charging capabilities, their ability to take on that charge and deliver that type of range. Now, I'm looking at you, Tesla Model 3, Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6. But going back to the Mirai, if hydrogen was for you, is it the car you buy, given the fact that there is only two available on the market? Would you have this over the Hyundai Nexo? And I've got to say, no, I don't think I would. I think the Nexo is a much better packaged car, has slightly better refinement to it, and is a bit more usable. And as I say, the same applies to Toyota that I said with Hyundai when we road tested the Nexo. I applaud them for bringing this car into the market, and it does show that there is an alternative out there. But maybe that alternative is best suited to heavy goods vehicles, buses, vans, even trains and the like. So for now, the Mirai remains an interesting footnote in the evolution of the electric car. It's nice to drive, it's just not compelling enough to own. Thank you ever so much for watching another episode of AutoEV. Please remember to make sure you're subscribed to the channel, give us a bit of a thumbs up, and make sure you've pressed that little bell button down below so you're notified of when our next video goes live. Remember, we're on all other social media platforms as well, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Go and give us a like there, because every little bit does help us. And if this has just whetted your appetite for even more road test reviews, remember, stick on our YouTube channel where you'll find a dearth of road test reviews, twin tests and our electric icon series. All that remains for me to say is thank you ever so much again for watching. We'll see you next time. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe, and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.